Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining me on my journey through the world of pens. I have a soft spot for vintage, for older style pens, and much to my amazement, there was a classic pen that I did not have. I almost bought a nib for it until I realized I don't have the pen. So I searched eBay, I looked around for a little bit until I found something, and it was from France. So that might key it in a little bit for people. It's always nice when you receive a nice personal note from a purchase on eBay, especially from somebody from France. So what is thulia? It's a burl type of wood. That's the way the grain is. From Morocco, it looks like, and thulia is basically used as lacquer for Parker 75, except in my research I found that Aurora also made a thulia lacquer pen back in the 70s. Here's the auction that I won on eBay. I was interested in the 75, and this is the delivery. It came in a week, 7 days. The description of the pen attracted my interest because it's from a collector. And that was nice. And what really enticed me were these nibs that I found on eBay. And since I'm into nibs, I was looking for a pen. I thought I had a Parker 75, but I didn't. And this nib was the one that really caught my attention. And from the description, it was hard to tell whether it's going to fit in any 75. But when I went on Parker75.com website, I found there's two types of nibs. And as we go further on the video, we'll see which nib is in the pen that I bought. And there's a lot of varieties of nibs here that are potential for some of the models of the 75. Here's all the various colors that some of them came in. These are mostly the French models. The one that I bought was on sale at Parker75.com, good website to check up. Also on Peyton Street Pens, a site I also recommend for looking for vintage. And here's a description. So here's the Parker 75 in pieces. This is an interesting nib assembly. It pulls right out. It's just a pressure fit. You know, sometimes they have a marking on this side of it to tell you whether it's a fine nib or not, but that certainly looks like fine to extra fine. 18 karat, made in France. I recently, flushed the whole thing out, and I didn't take out the nib before I flushed it, but that's something I could have done. And also when I reinsert it, as you can see, there's some striations on the grip, so I want to make certain that they match up with how I will hold the pen, like this when you put the nib back in, so that's nice. The other thing that's interesting is these fins are all the way around. A lot of the modern feeds have fins that stop before the channel that feeds the nib. And there's two types of nibs that go on the 75. We'll show you what the other one looks like. And that's the one that was for sale on eBay, but the 75 that I got doesn't use that nib. And I think that nib design, which looks more closer to a Parker 45 nib, the way it is designed, is probably for an earlier model of the Parker 75. So here we are looking at this beautiful lacquer underneath some LED lights. The pen is relatively light considering it's lacquer over brass. Pen is in excellent shape. I'm very happy with this eBay purchase. Someone was liquidating a collection, which someday I might be doing, so it's nice to be able to support them and get a pen that I thought I had a 75, but I don't. The other thing I was impressed with is why that nib is designed the way that it is. So when you push it into the section, it stops right there. So basically there's no gold nib hidden underneath of the section. So it's a way of giving you a great writing experience, a visually interesting nib without burying some gold, which costs a decent amount of money inside the section. So I give Parker a lot of kudos for what they did. The pen didn't come with a converter, but I knew that from the auction, but I have many options. I could put in an aerometric converter. This is a early style piston converter. It has a little ball in it, which is interesting. Or this is, to me, the more standard modern Parker converter. Even though I don't like that smoky section there that makes it more difficult to see the level of ink in there, but I think I'm going to use this one. What's amazing to me and very nice about Parker is all of these work. So any of the cartridge converter pens throughout Parker's lifetime take the same cartridge or same converter. Now let's look at the pen. This is the pen after I did a little bit of cleanup work, but not much. The pen was in excellent condition. Considering it's from 1980, there's the Q on the band. So this is a little older than my Ellipse, which we're going to compare this pen to a little bit later on. Got some LED lights, so hopefully that lacquer is coming through nicely. It is an interesting brown lacquer. Cap pulls off easily. Yeah, this section and nib. We're going to take a look at this pen in different parts, but it fits well in the hand. It kind of feels and looks a little bit small, but that just could be because of what pens I've been looking at, because it's all type of relative. You know, it snaps together very well. So this pen is basically about as good a shape as it was when it was new, from my perspective. So let's take a look in and talk a little bit about the history, and 75 for Parker's 75th anniversary. Somewhat of a higher end pen that Parker wanted to come out with. So, and they sold it for a very long period of time. So otherwise, successful pen. But is it a pen for you or is it a pen for me? Let's see. So here we have the 75 at the bottom, the Parker Sonnet, and the Parker Ellipse. So 80, 90, 2000. So these are about 10 years apart. All of these are metal pens with lacquer over them, so that's one thing they have in common. Made in France is another thing they all have in common. Some style of arrow clip they all have in common. And these are certainly a little bit different styles between these three pens. I just think that eye is just bizarre in the Ellipse. You know, all have a cap band of various designs and stages. Some plain ends to the barrel, some not. You know, different types of finials at the top of the cap. So let's pop the cap and see what the nibs are like. Three pretty much completely different nibs. Three completely different sections. The Sonnet's probably the more standard nib of these three. The Ellipse is the more unique one. Bizarre could also come to mind. They're all 18 karat nibs. These two are pretty much extra fine, and this one's more of a medium. Of all these three pens, the Ellipse is the one that I could prefer to write with. The other two will probably be uninked when we're done and put away for posterity. I thought it would be good just to also take a look at the back of the nib and look at the feeds, because there are three completely different feeds, and I would say completely different feeds. Different designs, different ways of moving ink from a cartridge or converter to a nib. So I guess you could say it was interesting that Parker explored with a lot of these, but you know, a lot of engineering dollars went into it. At the end of the day, it didn't really, from my perspective, change the writing experience that much. I mentioned earlier in the video that I thought I had a Parker 75, so I got motivated. I started searching, and I have to admit that it took me a few hours to find my Parker 75 that I had a vague recollection about. And this was the box that I finally dug up in one of my bins, where I keep pen boxes. I save all my pen boxes. I have the space. And when I do start liquidating my collection, I got a box to put it in. And have a label on it, because obviously if I just looked at the box, I wouldn't have thought about opening it up. And I see the 275, or a pair of fountain pen and ballpoint. So the other thing that's interesting about these besides the nice blue color, and we got some nice sunlight coming in. I did a quick polish on the gold bits. They were just a little bit tarnished. This pen set's been in the family for a long time. No recollection of how it got into the family. One of the things that is nice about this is the older model. It has a 14 karat nib. You know, made in France. That hasn't changed. But this is that nib style that I see on eBay. It just slips in and out. It's not keyed. It has that same kind of facets that we have in the Thule one, which is the newer version. It has a larger metal band here at the bottom of the section. That's one of the ways the two are dissimilar. And if this was painted, or this was plated with gold at one time, it certainly has worn off. And this pen does have signs of wear, where some of the lacquer has chipped away. In the ballpoint, there's a lot of chipping away. So you turn it to extract you push it to extract the ballpoint. Some Parkers you turn. So overall, we're going to compare this to the one I bought on eBay, but I'm glad I eventually found it and dug it out of my box. So one may ask, Chris, doesn't this nib remind you of the Parker 45? And I'll say, yes, it does. But just in the way that it's designed, it's obviously Parker made some changes. These are mostly steel nibs. There are some 45 gold nibs. This screws in versus pushes in. Much smaller nib. And yeah, I haven't had a chance to really evaluate and say which one I like the best, but I've been very happy with the 45 nibs, and my 45 video is still a work in progress. Just wanted to give you that comparison. So here we are with some Parker history. We have an earlier 51 here. It's a aerometric filler with the push button here. Very stylized arrow clip. Here we have a 45. The Lustaloy stainless steel cap is common between the two of these. And here we go with an earlier 75 and with a later 75. Both of these two are made in France. Both of these two were made in the United States. Let's focus in a little bit more on the clip, because I really think the design of the clip is indicative of what Parker was doing. This is a little bit shorter than usual, but some of those 51s had that type of short clip. You know, the top finial is a little bit different on these two, these three, but the 75s both have the same type of finial. And if you go down the barrel to the other end, you'll see that the 75s have a metal piece at the end, whereas the 45 and the 51 did not. So I thought that was an interesting little visual history lesson. So here we are with the 75s. Primarily I want to focus on the nib and the section. So the one at the bottom is the newer one, the 18 karat nib. The one on the top is the older one, which is a 14 karat. You can see a little bit more pronounced ring here at the bottom of the section. Here it's just a band, but it's the same type of angle out at the bottom of the section. The nibs are both similarly sized, but certainly the engravings are different between the two. This is a medium. I think you can see that extra tipping material on it. So I'm going to ink it up with the same ink in both pens. Blasphemy putting that smoky quartz into a lapis blue pen, but it's just for the writing sample. The other thing that I'm surprised about, considering this is a high-end Parker pen, the sections that screw into the metal barrels are both plastic. Similar threading. This is the original aerometric converter that came in the pen, the lapis pen. I'm not changing it out. And of course the Thule one came without a converter, so I put in one of the modern screw type converters. So now we're ready for nib and ink and paper. Now this nice light coming in, I thought we'd compare these two. So the lapis one has been used quite a lot. I wouldn't say abused, but used. So the lacquer has chipped off, which is not unusual when you're trying to put a coating like that over top of metal. But it just shows age. And to me, that's what vintage pens are all about. Yeah, it's nice to get one that's mint and have one that's mint, but then, should I write with it? Because now it's not mint anymore, and it's been mint for what, 50, 75, 100 years? And also the Thuya, probably butchering however that's supposed to be pronounced, is a much different lacquer. But each of them have their interesting visual appeal. So let's put nib to paper and see how these extra fine and medium Parker 75 nibs write from two different generations. So I wanted to show you the caps, that you hear that. So the Thuya one, the brown one, is definitely much less used. In fact, I would say hardly used at all compared to the lapis one, but probably after thousands of times of uncapping and capping, the lapis one still functions very, very well. And we'll see the nib writes extremely well. I mean, as an extra fine nib, this is extra fine. You know, it's relatively smooth, it glides. But it's not my favorite. You know, the smoky quartz is probably a little bit light for this extra fine nib, but it's still readable, it's still usable. So let's take a look at the medium one. I think right away you'll see that the medium is probably more like a broad. I mean, that's substantially more ink and a much broader line than what you got out of that extra fine. I mean, I wouldn't even consider these two types of nibs to be even related to one another. I mean, this is also smoother. You could probably hear that. I mean, this is a type of nib that I love. It's a little soft, but not enough that you're going to want to push it, but just it gives you that nice little bounce, which you didn't get with the extra fine up here, because this one is pretty hard and pretty stiff. So I'm impressed and amazed. I'm glad I pulled this one out of my archives, out of my bin. Don't think I'm going to even think about doing an upgrade, because I think this nib works really, really well. So we're going to switch back for our closing. So no ranking on these. The vintage pens I don't really want to rank because of the fact that they're one-offs and they're old, and you know, the odds of you being able to get exactly the pen that I'm writing with are pretty slim. You'll get maybe something similar, but a lot more variation that you'll find with any of the modern factory-produced pens. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this view of an iconic pen. A pen that has been around for a long time from a very premier pen manufacturer. So may you have many great writing experiences. Explore this phenomenal world of pens, nibs, inks, and paper that we have an opportunity to take part in. Hopefully you've enjoying your holidays. It is that time of the year now. Thanksgiving has just passed, and Black Friday is today, and who knows what it's going to be like for the rest of the season, but hopefully you have a great one. Enjoy it. Enjoy every day. Until we meet again, bye.